Welcome, welcome. So today I am excited to bring a friend, a colleague, just an amazing human being, frankly. Dr. Emily Hill. I love that you have your doctorate. And today we're actually going to be talking coding. All right. So one of the things I want to just share with you in this interview, have you ever been in a place where you knew that you wanted to learn a new skill set? You knew that you wanted to level up, but you weren't quite sure where to go or what to do. Well, I personally believe coding as a language is something that everyone should at least have familiarity with, right? Right?
Yes.
Like it's kind of like it's like language, right? You just need to know. So today I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Emily Hill. And Emily, can you just kind of unpack with us what inspired you to get started? Like just give us kind of your backstory. Go for it.
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you so much for having me today. So I'm a child of the 80s, and it was unusual for a kid who was 3 to have access to a computer, but I did have access in my preschool, and so I was kind of an early adopter. And my mom was a tech manager for AT&T, so she always brought home technology. And because I was an only child, I didn't have to compete with a brother who might take over the tech, which happened to a lot of ladies in technology. So it was all me, and I got to play with it. And actually what I really enjoyed was making things look cool. But I really liked making things pretty and getting things out there. And so that kind of started me. And then I loved shopping. Loved shopping. I'm sure, Anne, you can identify with this. And so I started online shopping back in 99. And that just kind of like, I would do eBay listings. I learned HTML so I could code them up and make them look pretty. So it was just kind of this thing. And eventually it was like, well, I like music. I like computers. Which one's more employable? Okay, computers it is.
I love that. I love that. So you had like a an early adopter mindset, early adapter, if you will, and
Mhm.
then you had access to kind of play around and experiment. It's kind of like I can't remember the name of it. I think it's the Kia. I can't think of it. It's a way to learn piano where you just actually sit down and you let the child or you let the new learner experiment with the sounds that come out. You don't try to force them into a
Right.
system.
Like Suzuki? Is that?
Suzuki, that's what I was thinking.
Yep.
It's this is it's like Suzuki for
Right.
coding. All right, so let me ask you another question. Do you have so you're the founder of an actual online school
Mhm.
called The Joy of Coding, correct?
Yes.
Can,
Yep.
okay, so how do you can you just unpack that a little bit and then unpack your process for the whole thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I went to college to become a computer science major and learn how to code to become a software developer, right? And have one of those nice, real cushy salaries, right? Job security, all the things, build those cool sites. And I started trying to learn back in high school, but then it took me a while. It took me a while. And so on my journey, I ended up getting 3 computer science degrees. And, I went all the way through school and I still had to teach myself how to code. So 10 years and $250,000 later. So
Whoa.
frustrating. And because of that experience, I was really determined to go on a mission to teach anybody how to code, right? Because there's a group of intuitive geniuses out there that just they live and breathe it. And it's just so easy for them. And I see it all the time when there's a learner that doesn't pick it up as quickly, they start to feel like they can't do it. That I had some best friends that fit into that category, right? And I've seen it in the classroom. One student is like this whiz kid, and then everybody else who might be very good shies away because they're not that kid, right? They're not the crazy intuitive genius. And so I created an academy where everyone can come and learn so you don't have to be limited, because the traditional learning model didn't work for me. And it doesn't work for a lot of people either, right? Because intuitive geniuses, they just get it. So they don't have to do anything special to teach it. They just convey the information. Whereas, in other subjects like math or chemistry, we've learned over, centuries how to teach these subjects. And coding just hasn't had that attention because it's so new. So I really developed a foolproof process to help students come in, get the technology understanding that they need. And really it's about the problem solving. Like, how do you take any idea that you have and communicate it in a way that the computer can understand? And so we have a process that we use that's foolproof, that is future proof as well. Like, it doesn't matter which language. So the languages can change, but the skills that we teach are fundamental. They never expire. And so that's something that's really unique about our vision, and that we give students hands-on learning experiences so they can learn by doing, apprenticing to mentors who are, you know, six-figure software developers in their day-to-day job, keeping up with all the latest tech. So that's kind of our approach that we use to help train students.
Okay, that's really cool. You said something that really struck me. You said you can take an idea, like something out there, and then you're basically taking, my husband calls it the fairy dust, right? You're taking the idea, but you're making it into this concrete code that actually communicates it so that anybody who comes in contact with what was kind of this obscure fairy dust, but you're able to train people how to do that. Would you mind unpacking that process just a little bit? Because I think you're tapping into something that, like you said, you don't leave the majority of the bell curve, which is where the majority of people fall, out just because they're not these intuitive, creative geniuses. So can you unpack that process a little bit?
Sure, sure. And to be honest, it took me 10 years to learn it myself, and it took me just as long to learn how to teach it to anybody. Like it really was an investment. I know you appreciate that, you know, as
Yes,
well. And
I
so,
do.
so it really, at the fundamental level, what it boils down to is two things: is, well, you need the skills, the confidence, and the experience, right? Because I can have the most magical training on the planet, but if you don't have confidence in yourself and your ability to execute, it doesn't even matter. So that's one. I'm going to leave those other pillars aside and just focus on the skills, which isn't necessarily the whole thing, but it needs to be the right skills. Because if you think about it, technology is ever expanding. It's always changing. New stuff is always coming out. How do technologists keep up with it, right? So we have to have our foundational elements, our alphabet, as it were. And so that's really the true innovation that we have, is the 7 basics. So these are the 7 basics of problem solving, of programming. And they've been the same 7 basics for 50 years. Like every program since the 1970s has these 7 basics. It's the alphabet. And this is why when learners just get started, they get confused because they're like trying to understand the landscape. They don't have the fundamentals. They don't have these like 7 basic things. And so we teach students that, and I do it in a very unique way, battle tested with, you know, hundreds, thousands of students at this point, but hundreds when I was a professor. And I just figured out this foolproof way that I can teach absolutely anyone how to create a single file, right? Like one file of code. I can teach you how to do that. And then all the rest of the pieces, when you start growing programs that are big, that like do cool things like YouTube or Uber or like really big things, that's where we bring in the experience, because everyone is going to have a different career goal. And we can customize the learning to where they want to go. And so then each student might have a different learning journey because, oh, I want to learn how to make the next YouTube, or I want to learn how to do this AI thing, right? So they will differentiate as they advance, but it starts with the fundamentals. And we teach our students how to solve problems even when Google and ChatGPT fail, because that's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why software developers get paid so much. It's because it's not because they use ChatGPT and Google 90% of the time. It's the 10% when they can't. And we're the only game in town that I know of that actually teaches how to do that. So
come on. It's like you're a high stakes chess master, right? And you're imparting the Bobby Fischer skill set, if you will, into the normal person who actually, I believe, you know, the way we're wired and created, it's an exposure issue, right? Sometimes we just need exposure to learn how to think differently. And you're not only doing that and modeling it, but then you're empowering people to walk in that. Like that's just cool.
It's like kind of like a chaos wrangler, right? Is a little bit kind of, because that's at the end of the day, like what is the essential fundamental skill that I am teaching? And typically it's how to be comfortable with the unknown and to still be confident in yourself when you don't know the answer, right? Like literally like at the base level, that what cuts across everything, that is essentially what I teach.
That's really cool. All right. This is cool. Okay. So let me ask you a question. So we know what's possible with what you do. What actually holds, I'll say, you know, someone like myself, normal people, what holds people back? Like I'm not talking like externally, things like, you know, money, time, that kind of stuff, but what holds people back internally when it comes to learning how to code, understanding the power, understanding the relevance of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I've taught coders a long time. And as long as someone is willing to show up and, every day consistently and reach out for help when they get stuck. They're like, these are the two pieces. Like, those are the only essential things. And the idea is once you ask for help, being open to not necessarily being given the answer, right? That whole idea behind giving a man a fish versus, teaching him how to fish, right? Like as long as you're open to coaching and being coached on a solution path and maybe not just handed the answer, right? Because I have had students get, they just want the answer. They just want to do it. They want to go, but it's not going to serve them long term because technology changes and it's never about the problem in front of them. It's about all the problems like it they haven't seen yet, right? So we need to teach them how to overcome that. And so as long as they can show up and do the work and they are willing to raise their hand and be coached once they get stuck, there is nothing that prevents anyone from becoming a coder. Now, the type of job might differ, right? So depending on the speed that people learn, they might be set out for a different level of coding job. There's so many, it like doesn't matter. Coding is everywhere. So like there's a tech job for everybody.
So that's actually wild. Because you think about that, Emily, and correct me if I'm not understanding right, but basically if you give them an answer, someone gets stuck, right? So they're going to show up, right? What is it, Woody Allen, who said 90% of life is just showing up. So they show up, but then they come to a juncture where they've got a problem. And when you have that problem, you're basically saying, I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm going to give you the skill set behind the discovery of how to get the answer.
Exactly.
Okay. What now? Next question. What kind of pushback? How do you get through that internal kind of pushback? Because we've been it's like we've been programmed our whole life. We've been coded, right? Our whole life. There's a right answer, there's a wrong answer. You stand up when the bell rings, you go to recess, you come back when the bell rings to sit down at the desk. So it's like we're not actually, my language, I call it pattern mapping. We're not actually pattern mapped to think that way. So how do you help people learn a new way of thinking?
Oh, so good. So the other piece that comes in here, which I don't usually see emphasized in technical education, is mindset, right? And getting dialed into your why, right? Because once you know where you're going and why you're getting there, typically people are a lot more open to hearing these things and always helping to explain why. So for instance, it could even be a student we do practice interviews to prepare them for the workforce before they have our internship program. It also helps us make sure that they have the skills they need to be successful. And, I'll have to explain to a student, I could move you on to the internship and you could do great. But once you get on the job market, you're not going to pass the interviews unless you've checked this box. So basically this is why it requires some domain knowledge, is that for each question that comes up, we have to then re-explain to them why we can't tell them and align it so they see it. So I have a document of the 4 pillars of problem solving that I actually use to problem solve everything, my life, my business, my code, and I'm just teaching them. And so me and all of my coaches were trained to identify which of the 4 pillars is the gap, because literally that's it. Like anyone brings me any coding challenge, I just apply these 4 simple principles every single time. So we're teaching our students how to keep applying those 4 principles for themselves. And it might take them 6 months to get it and internally, but it's only 4 things. It's like 4 simple things.
Right? I mean,
Exactly.
how many times it's like, well, all I have to do is do this. And then you just wander around the house. You're like, okay, well, you wake up a week later and you're like, oh, that was probably pretty easy, but I just didn't do it. So.
Right, exactly. Well, they don't always see it, right? Because we have blind spots. And that's one of the pillars is observability. And if you have blind spots, right, like you can't see it. And so, and actually most successful people do follow these 4 steps as well. So it's not unique to coding, but we interpret it and translate it for the coding audience so they can really see it and connect the dots for the specific motivation that they have. If that makes sense.
Come on. I want to make sure and do more interviews with you because I could just go down every single rabbit hole, like what are the 7, what are the 4? But I actually want to keep this super high level for our audience right now because, one of the things that I'm passionate about is being a lifelong learner. because I think learning in one area helps us expand in other areas. Right. My trade is design, what was design is design, I guess. And one of the things that made me a better designer was travel and exposure to new places and new styles and new ways of thinking and pattern and all of that kind of stuff. So in the same way, what you're doing, I'm like Dr. Emily, right? Like what you're doing, Dr. Hill, is you're actually taking a very concrete skill set, coding, and you're empowering your students to have a 360-degree approach so that when they are in the job market, when they're in a space where they're coming up against a problem that, as you said, Google and ChatGPT can't solve, they're right there at the ready. And, and if I understand it, they don't have to be or come into the program as the savant.
Right.
Because it's a learnable skill. Can you unpack that learnable skill piece a little more? Because I think that's one of the coolest things that you have is the ability to do that, help people in that.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And actually, and you do the same thing when you teach us as well, right? And when you spin out new brands, I was like, oh my goodness, she's doing the same process. It's awesome, right? But the key insight here is that I'm not struggling to teach my students how to write code from scratch. Like imagine sitting down and writing out a blank page. It's so much harder than if you have an example or a template that you're just following, right? I know you teach this in your brand workshops, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing, right? And so actually, in my PhD research, I actually studied how do new software developers to a project get up to speed quickly? And how do we help them get up to speed more quickly? So I literally got my PhD in studying how do you prep someone to become an amazing developer as quickly as possible, right? And it doesn't mean writing from scratch, but it does mean being able to read the code and recognize, this is a template I can apply to my problem. And then all I have to do is tweak the 20% that's not that template. So you can still use Google, you can still use ChatGPT to generate templates, or you can walk into the system you're building or creating or editing and use the templates right from within that. So you don't even have to find them online because the system you're walking into, because hardly anyone except founders write systems from scratch, right? You're coming into this behemoth. You go to work for Chase, they have code already, right? You're like, and then you just find the template and then you can match what the experts were doing even before you fully understand it, but it gives you that next carrot, that nugget to learn from, right? And it helps guide your learning and keep going.
Come on. And that's that, what is it? It's like building skill set upon skill set upon skill set. So I think you talked about it in the first part, like the confidence, the clarity piece. So you're building that, you're edifying yourself, if you will, so that you become capable in any situation that you get dropped into. All right. Well, let me ask you a question. What are some of so we tackled, and again, I would love to have you back and we'll unpack some more of this because what many people don't know is that when I went to UC Berkeley, I was an engineering math major, not for very long because I was like one of two women in the program and I wanted to go have fun. But I love the concept of the design. I call it design fidelity. So that internal, overcoming those internal objections. But what are some of the external things that hold people back from stepping in and learning, like just saying, hey, I'm going to sign up for Emily's school like right now, just because it's fun. Okay. I mean, that's the truth, friends. I mean, you go to cooking school to just learn how to cook because it's fun. The truth is you should go to coding school to learn how to code just because it's fun. So what are some of the external things that come up for people?
Oh, such a good question, Anne. Such a good question. And I think learning for fun is a totally awesome way of doing it as well, because I've taught students of all ages, from teenagers to, I think my oldest, they admitted was 79. But I don't know if that's true or no. Right, or if that was just the top they were willing to share. But really any age can get into this and have a blast and have so much fun. It's not just for the new kids. And in fact, there's, even if you don't want to do it for fun, you want to do it for profit. There's some companies that only hire fully functioning adults, like companies like Netflix. They will not hire the fresh out of, grads, because they want someone who can function, has executive function, team working skills, communication, things like that. But sometimes what I find is that a lot of students have doubts, right? And especially because our focus is to help build confidence. because we know it's not about the skills. Like there's the process of problem solving that goes into programming, but it's not like any one particular technology skill, like here or there. It's the whole piece, but it's also having the confidence to walk into a situation and not shy back, to not shy away, to be like, I can do this, I've got this, and then take the action that gets you there. So sometimes what I hear is people feel uncertain about if they want to do it, if this is for them, because they are looking to overcome whatever block was blocking them from learning it on their own, right? They're having to overcome that. And so sometimes there's some resistance there internally. And also if there's friends or family members, if they don't believe that they could be capable, if they don't know any coders, it's definitely more effective. Like if someone knows a coder down the street, they're like, oh my goodness, that guy's making 200K working from home. He's 2 doors down. I can do this, right? So I think sometimes those, those external forces and factors, I think mostly it's internal, but also, the mindset of not being willing to invest in ourselves, like of being afraid that we won't succeed. And so like being hesitant to take that action. So I think those, those internal and external kind of play together sometimes.
Come on. So you have, can you just unpack for our listeners? You have an actual school called Joy of Coding. Now, do you have like a mission statement? What do your students come in for typically when they are coming into your school?
So we give students the skills, confidence, and experience to land their first or next tech job, whatever that looks like for them. Right. And because of the nature of how we teach, it's very experiential, like it's hands-on, you're learning by doing. So you're not missing any of those steps that they don't share with you in a textbook or in a course, right? They'll teach you all about this technology, but not how do you actually deploy it? How do you work with a team of others? And let's say you've got 100 live users out there in the world using your software and 12 other people are editing it. And you wrote this bit of code, and how do you get it up there? Like right, it's right, like there's this real systems thing of like getting it out the door, and that's often not taught and neglected in academia, which is partly why I left to start my own school, was because I had reached the limit of how far I could push it, because a 3-month semester is not a software project. No. Software projects are years typically, right? And so to get that realistic experience, I had to create a different space. But it's really about giving them the skills, confidence, and experience. And then for those that want to stay with us to go on the job hunt, we also provide connections to help and a whole pathway to help them knock that out of the park for the job hunt and get that first job. And it could be anywhere. I've had students graduate or choose to leave because they got a job within like 3 months. My fastest was 2 weeks, right? It wasn't necessarily a web developer, but like, right? Like that's the coding skills we teach every single week is more employable than the week before. Right? Because
that's good news.
Right. And so it's designed and stacked so that like, if at any point you're like, you know what, I think I've learned enough, I'm good. Great. You can become a project manager. You can do, testing. There's like so many opportunities there.
That's huge. And, one of the things that you said that I really appreciate is that people can come in, they can learn the skill set, but let's say they're a manager by design, right? So they're able to take their design and leverage this new skill set and then go become that project manager rather than the actual specific coder. But you also said something else, and I want to understand this. So you can come in to the Joy of Coding, right? And by the way, I just love the name. I mean, how fun is that, right? So you can come into the Joy of Coding, and then from there, you can get the skills, but don't you also have like an in-house kind of intern, like there's a way that people can get extra additional hands-on experience. Okay. Unpack that a little bit for our listeners. Cause I think that's it's almost like a journeyman. It's like, there's space to really develop. So can you unpack that?
Absolutely. And so actually you got it just right, Anne. And one of the cool things that we do that I don't see anywhere else is we actually allow students to not commit to a track before they join, so that they can let learning how to code guide them and they can try it. And actually they're encouraged, like, here, go talk to this senior developer in data science, go talk to this one in AI or in mobile, see what you like, listen in on an intern meeting, what gets you excited? Like, what part of technology do you enjoy? And then, so we have a one-on-one career strategy session, and where they pick and we align their career goals with the projects that we have available so that they can make sure that it's custom for them. And even within a project, we might have students doing 4 different career paths, but they're all working together because, right, they're all in the market. They're all getting there. And I think the key difference, we do sometimes have people asking, oh, do you just partner with companies to offer your internships? And the answer is no, because typically interns aren't given real work.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Talk about that, right?
Yes, exactly. So for instance, I was an intern at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center and a startup in Silicon Valley in the shadow of Oracle. And basically I got to eat lunch with the other interns, right? Because what company is going to hand, right, their bread and butter software over?
Here's the rocket.
I know. Yeah, give an intern, right? Like, what? I mean, I did a meaningful project because I just picked one that was of interest, right? So I was able to kind of salvage something, but like, no company is going to hand their bread and butter software that's worth millions of dollars over to an unpaid, untrained intern. It's just not realistic, right? And pair that with the fact that companies only want to hire experience because nobody wants to do the work of training people because people lie on their resumes. The filtering process to find good hires is poor. And so they've been burned too many times. People come in, they can't do anything. So now it's like, no, you have to work somewhere else first. That makes sense.
So you're creating that petri dish is probably not the right language, but I'm not a coder, so just yet, right?
Yeah.
But it's that space where you're providing an incubation period where an intern can actually work on something legitimate and concrete, and at the same time be in kind of mentored by people who are in the actual space.
Exactly. Because things are so much more caught than taught.
Yeah.
So when you're an intern, we're simulating their first position, their first job, and they get to like bump, skin their knees and bump their elbows with us instead of on the job. Right. And so we have amazing senior developers on staff. Like these guys are paid like hundreds of dollars of hours because they make, an hour. They make tons of money as software developers, and they just hang out on Zoom waiting for student questions. And then they teach them how would they solve it. So like it's an immediate transfer. I've had students in a month level up what normally takes people years because they're literally just absorbing the process the professionals use, and they get to embed that and have that with them forever. So it's a really cool process. And our software is completely built 100% by our interns, which is different. And so we're able to really guarantee a rich learning experience that we wouldn't if we were kind of like outsourcing it to other companies who might not want to mentor them, to be honest, because they have their own work to be doing. Right.
Yeah. That's really cool. So you're providing not only this bridge space, but the high skill development, high confidence development. There were 3 things that you pointed out at first. It was confidence, skills, and
experience.
Okay. So you're basically providing this beautiful lab practical where it's executed in a safe environment, but it's also a real environment because then other people are leveraging your team for real software, which is one of the things that we've talked about. I'm gonna have Emily back because I want to talk with Emily about some of the things that we have on the board, right? Because I'm in the brand building space, and I love getting to the bottom of the bottom. Like I love the research piece. So even at UC Berkeley, when I was there and when I did well in class, one of the things that I loved doing was getting to the root issue. So developing software, developing, apps, developing things that actually serve our clients at a high level. That's where I just like nerd out with Emily. I'm like talking like, let's do this and let's do that. So Emily, as we kind of wrap up today, and remember, let's do like 3 more if you're up for it. Awesome. And here's my question. For Joy of Coding right now, where can people get in touch with you like right now? Because you have challenges, or do you have classes and like things that people can sign up for like today to learn and to potentially join some of your current programs, which by the way, friends, are really cool. Like she's legit, okay? It's like
Thank you so much,
legit,
Ann.
legit. All right. So where can people go today to connect with you?
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think the easiest place is to check out our website, joyofcoding.academy.
Okay.
Other than that, though, we have a really active and vibrant Facebook group, which is it's free. It's for anyone that, is thinking about coding and learning or, on the job market. We have that available as well. But I think joyofcoding.academy will be the fastest way to help people move forward.
Awesome. Awesome. We'll make sure my team goes ahead and puts those things in the description. And can we give it up for Emily, Dr. Emily Hill today? Not just like a profoundly cool human, but also like she's got this stuff and it's really fun, which is one of the reasons I wanted to bring her to you, our listeners today. So thank you, Emily. This has been awesome. We're going to say goodbye now and make sure and check out that the description after I get the team to write it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you again for having me. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Let me